Hey there, if you are thinking about selling your home in Northeast Los Angeles, you probably have a million questions and you don't know where to start. My name is felipecrook with eXp Realty. I've been selling homes for over 20 years, and I'm going to answer all of the questions that I hear from sellers right now, and some of the questions that you probably should be asking, but you haven't thought of yet. All right, let's dive in. So first things first, let's talk about what is happening in the housing market in Northeast LA. Right now, mortgage rates are hovering right about 6.15%. Now, most economists, including Fannie Mae, the Mortgage Bankers Association, and the National Association of Realtors, expect that mortgage rates are going to stay right about 6%. Maybe if we're really lucky, the high fives. But if you're waiting for those interest rates to go back to 3 and 4% like we had in the pandemic, that's not going to happen. So in terms of inventory, our inventory has been creeping up for the last few years, but we're still just under what they were right before the pandemic. So increase of inventory means that there's more supply. That means some buyers are getting some more negotiating power than they did back in the pandemic days when it was absolutely insane. So the good news is interest rates are coming down and there's a little bit more selection of properties. However, a lot of people think that because there's a lot more inventory on the market that the prices are going to crash. Well, most economists are expecting that the home prices in Los Angeles County are going to go up 1 to 2% this year. Not a huge amount of appreciation, not like 15 or 20% like we saw in the pandemic, but they are not crashing. So if you're waiting for prices to go down and interest rates to go down, again, you're going to probably be waiting for a very long time. Now, just to show you how much demand there actually is in the real estate market right now, I looked at the last 6 months of sales. There was roughly 492 sales in the Northeast Los Angeles. Now, I'm including Silver Lake, Echo Park, Los Feliz, Highland Park, Glassell Park, Cypress Park, Eagle Rock, and Atwater Village in that whole area of the Northeast Los Angeles. So out of the 492 homes that sold in the last 6 months in the Northeast Los Angeles, 42% still sold above its asking price. That is a crazy good market if you're a seller. Now, there is some good news for buyers as well. 9% of the homes sold at asking price and 48% sold below the asking price. So we are seeing some negotiating power come back to the buyers, which is a much needed relief from the pandemic. And things are still moving fairly quickly. The average days on the market is around 55 days in the Northeast Los Angeles. Now, there are specific pockets that are selling a little quicker. So anytime that you are looking to sell your home, you want to make sure that you get an accurate idea of what the comparable sales are in your neighborhood. So there is one question that most people don't ask me, but they're asking Google or ChatGPT, can you sell your home in Northeast Los Angeles by yourself? Yes, of course you can. You do not need a real estate agent to do that. However, a really good real estate agent can add more to your sale than they cost. There's actually a study in the Journal of Housing Research that says a rookie agent, an agent who has less than 2 years of experience, sells their homes 10% less and take longer time to do that. Experience really does matter. It matters in terms of how you price it, how you stage it, how you market the property. All of these things make a big difference in terms of your price. And I've been in the real estate industry since 2003. So I've seen the crazy booms. I've seen the foreclosure crisis in Las Vegas. That's where I originally started my real estate career. And I've seen the craziness during the pandemic. I've seen it all. Okay, now let's switch gears. Now let's talk about the actual house that you're going to be selling. There is a lot of preparation that sellers need to do to get their house up and running. Now, when you live in your house, it's very different than when you're going to sell your house. And there's no judgment in how you live, but how you sell your house needs to be done a specific way. When I'm working with sellers, I take a lot of time to make sure the property is properly prepared in terms of staging, in terms of how it looks, curb appeal, before we do any of the marketing. That is going to be really critical. Staging is probably one of the number one things that I would recommend here in the Los Angeles area. LA is a very expensive area, and the buyers are pretty savvy, and they have a high expectation of the properties that they're going to look at. If you go into a property that has not been properly staged versus one that is staged and looks like a model house, everyone will gravitate towards the one that is the model house. They want to buy the dream of what your home can offer. So that is absolutely critical. Now, There are some instances where you cannot move out of the house and stage the property. That is totally fine. In that case, I would definitely recommend hiring a decorator to come in and redecorate the house a little bit. You don't have to go crazy. New pillows, new comforters, new accessories, all of those things make a huge difference in terms of the presentation of the property. And I'm going to show you a perfect example of what I'm talking about. I just sold this beautiful Spanish home in West Adams. Now, that's not in the Northeast Los Angeles, but the principles are exactly the same. So here's what I'm talking about. This property was really gorgeous. It had this big domed ceiling in the living room, it had these great windows. It was Spanish style, which everyone loved. It was a perfect little house. The sellers opted not to stage the property because it just wasn't feasible for them. So we ended up taking photos after we decluttered it a little bit. Now, these photos are fine and the property showed fine. However, we're not getting a lot of traffic and we didn't get any offers in 45 days. So after 45 days, I said, okay, guys, we need to take a different tactic. So they hired a friend who was a decorator to restage the property using a lot of their existing furniture. We supplemented with new rugs, new accessories. We removed a lot of furniture. We did a lot of stuff that didn't cost an incredible amount of money, but let me tell you the difference it made. If you look at this photo now, it seems more inviting. It seems more like a model home. It's a little easier on the eye. It just gives it a better sense of style and people loved it. There was a difference between night and day. The other thing that we did, and this is going to be really important, is the price. I'm going to talk about that in just a moment. But as you can see, we didn't do drastic changes. We used a lot of their existing furniture. We just changed out some accessories. We changed out rugs. We removed a lot of furniture and it made it feel so much more open and it looked like a model house and people started coming in like crazy. The next big aspect that you really need to consider anytime you're selling your home, especially in Northeast LA, is the pricing. For example, let's go back to that West Adams listing. Now, the sellers wanted to list the property at 1.35. And I said, this is just too high. I don't recommend this. I would recommend a lot lower price. But they wanted to try it at that price and with the idea that they could always come down in price. So after about 45 days, I told the sellers, we need to have a different strategy here. This is not working. We're not getting enough traffic and we have 0 offers. Let's rethink about this. So I recommended to reduce the price to 1.2 million, which was pretty scary for these sellers because this was their entire retirement. But we restaged it. We dropped the price and then it was like a night and day difference. Our open houses had 25 people on Saturday, 30 on Sunday. We ended up getting 3 offers. And guess what happened to the price? It sold for $1.368 million, $40,000 over the original price that we had set, all because we priced it low and created a bidding war, and we restaged the property to make it look like a model home. Those things make a huge difference in your bottom line. Do not skip these things. Now, one of the reasons why that pricing strategy works really well. Let's say that you're in a neighborhood in Highland Park and you know this neighborhood in and out. You're on Zillow all the time looking at properties every single day. And you see a property that is just slightly under market. You're like, oh, that is a really good deal. Well, every other buyer that is looking in that area is thinking the same thing. They all come to the open house and then they end up falling in love with it because you've staged it properly and there's really good marketing. And then they write an offer. When you get multiple offers, that's when prices drive up above their asking price. So those 42% of homes that sold above their asking price, this is a strategy they're using. It is scary for some sellers to price a home under market, but I promise you, if you price it well and stage it well, it will come back to you. Okay, you have staged your property and you have the price that you're comfortable with. And before we put it on the market, I always hire a professional videographer and a photographer to do professional photos on the property. If you have an agent that is taking photos with their cell phone, fire them immediately and call me because I'd be more than happy to get you the right photographer for your property. Choosing the right photographer is absolutely critical when you are selling your house. The first impression that a buyer will get will most likely be online. And if the photo looks enticing and attractive, they're going to want to see that property. The more people see your property online, they will translate into a showing. The more showings you get, the more offers you get, the more money you'll get. So think about that. I also like to do a lot of drone footage because you get an idea of what the lot looks like and and a vibe of the neighborhood. All of this makes a big difference when you're looking at properties online. Properties with virtual tours and really good photos tend to show up on the search results above ones that do not have a virtual tour or a video. So it's very important for that. Not only is that important for the multiple listing service, I actually advertise your home on social media. Now, if I just put it on my Facebook page or my Instagram, maybe my mom will like it, my sister might like it as well, or you might like it. But if you really want to get seen, you're going to have to run an ad behind it. These are pay-to-play platforms. So if you really want a lot of exposure, then you're going to need to run an ad behind it. And I do that in a very targeted way to make sure that people understand this is a great property in Highland Park or in Silver Lake or in Echo Park. Some of my listing videos have gotten 50,000 views. More views equal more interest, which equals more offers, which equals more money. This is a really important aspect of marketing your home. So your home is on the market and you get an offer on the property. I'm going to explain the entire home selling process here in Los Angeles. Now, this is different in every city in Southern California, so you just need to be aware of that. In the city of Los Angeles, there are specific rules that you need to follow when you're selling your home. Let's talk about when you first get that offer. When you get an offer, I will always review it and I will give you the net sheet or your estimated proceeds based on the offer that was submitted. You and I can talk about what the offer is. I can make recommendations on whether or not we should counter or not counter. By the way, I always say counter every single offer. You never know if a buyer is going to be willing to come back at a higher number. A lot of times you will see lowball offers that come back up to listing price because they really want the house, but they just kind of wanted to see how motivated the seller was. You want to make sure that you counter every single offer. It is a little bit more work for the agent, but that is our job. That's what we're supposed to do. So make sure that you counter every single offer. Don't get emotional about it. Just counter and see what we can come up with. Once you guys have agreed upon a price and your terms, then what we'll do is we'll open up Escrow. Escrow is a neutral third-party company that deals with the buyer and the seller, and they deal with the title as well. They make sure everything is zeroed out before they transfer the title over into the seller, into the buyer's name. Now, once we have an accepted offer, they've opened up Escrow and submitted their earnest money deposit. The buyer's agent is going to call and schedule an inspection. Usually it's about 8 to 10 days for your home inspections. Now, they can do as many home inspections as they want, electrical, plumbing, roof, mold, as long as they don't damage the property. So they have the right to do that, and they have the right to cancel for any reason during that inspection period. While you are there, I always recommend getting out of the property during the inspection. I will show up for the inspection, make sure everything is going smoothly. After the inspection, they will submit what's called a repair request. In that repair request, you will negotiate on things that need to be fixed. If there's a new roof or if a plumbing fixture needs to be taken care of, they can either say, you need to fix this, or they can ask for a credit, or they can ask for a price reduction, or they can cancel the transaction and get their full earnest money back during that period. This is a second negotiation. So just keep in mind, especially in LA, you're negotiating this contract 2 times, once at the very beginning and then once after your inspections. So if you are thinking that this is the final line when you get your sales contract, just keep in mind, they're going to come back. Even if you say, I'm selling this as is. You put that in contracts all the time. It doesn't matter. They can still ask for repairs or credits. Now, you don't have to say yes. You can say, nope, go take a hike. This is the price. And they have the right to cancel. And if it's in a really desirable neighborhood, you have a little bit more negotiating room. If there's multiple offers, you definitely have more negotiating power. So just keep that in mind. There's 2 times when you renegotiate the contract. Once you have come to terms with repair requests and the repair credits, the second thing that will happen is the appraisal. The appraiser goes out to the property to make sure it's worth what the buyer is paying for and it's worth what the lender is giving you money for. So those are 2 major hurdles. Also, during that time period, you're going to give all of the disclosures to the buyer that you know about the property. So you will fill all those disclosures out ahead of time and you'll provide those to the buyer to review and approve to move forward. Once the appraisal is done and we're in good shape, the inspection is done and we're in good shape, then we move on to the last phase of the home sale purchase. The last phase of the home selling process is done mostly behind the scenes. Now, you will sign some documents with the escrow and the title company. You'll give them your bank information for when you get those proceeds, when you finally sell. And the buyer will schedule a walkthrough on the property and they'll sign what's called a closing disclosure. And once they sign that closing disclosure, they have 3 days before they can legally sign their loan documents. Once they've signed their loan documents and they've wired in their down payment and the loan has funded into escrow and they have all the money in escrow, what they will do is they will release the deed to get recorded at the county. Once the deed is recorded at the county, you are no longer the homeowner and you have now taken your proceeds and gone to Mexico to live your retirement, or wherever you want to be, or moved into another property. There's lots of different ways that we can negotiate the close date as well. Just keep that in mind. That is a general overview of the home sale process. There are a lot of little details in between that I can go over. If you have any questions, you can always text me at 213-268-6832. Or you can email me at philippe@felipecrook.com. Here's a couple questions I get all the time. When is the best time to sell your home in Northeast LA? Well, typically it's in the spring and summertime. Now, we don't have a crazy bell curve like you do in New England, where there's very few sales in the wintertime because it's snowing and freezing. It was 85 degrees here in February. So we don't really have that winter effect. There's less home selling during the winter months, but you can still sell it during the winter months and still get a good price. I will say spring and summer are usually the best times, but you can sell it any time of the year as long as you're good with your pricing. Now, the other question I always get is, how do I sell a property quickly? If you have an urgent need to sell your home, the best and fastest way to do that is to price it under market, stage it really well, and then market the hell out of it. And I can do all of those things based on your goals. So if you have any other questions, please give me a call. My name is Philippe Crook with eXp Realty, investing in your dreams.